really reliable force in effect. And for instance, the lowering taxes for both companies, also the smaller companies, which is very important, and not just for big banks, like Mr. Macron said. Mr. Macron has augmented taxes for everybody except the big banks. So it's not a liberal policy. But Mr. Berlusconi did something more. He has lowered taxes for the big companies, for small businesses, and for middle class. So he really was liberal in a broad sense. But Mr. Ekolesi is not even admitting it. He cannot admit it because he's not really a liberal. He's more engaged with ALDE group of the European Parliament, and as I explained in my separate video, ALDE group, the Alliance of Liberals and Democrats for Europe, is not really liberal group, it's Eurocratic group. It's basically, it praises everything what makes European Union more centralized and working like an entire like a state, like a federation, and they dislike everything what is which could be liberal, but it's working in frames of some national political scene. So no matter what Mr. Berlusconi is doing, he introduced some bills which are in spirit conservative, and he also introduced some bills which are clearly liberal. Berlusconi himself perceived his party, the Forza Italia, as he called it the primo partito liberale di massa, the first massive liberal party in Italian history, and to some extent he was right, especially in relation to economical things, in economical policy. So, but Mr. Ekolesi is not capable of admitting it and of seeing it really, because he's more Eurocrat than liberal. And what's more, he's also against Berlusconi, because he dislikes the idea that the politicians should really listen to people's needs and respond to them. He dislikes this idea. He prefers the self-righteous style of previous decades when politicians were not really in contact with the people, and when they just making everything in their own circle, and deciding everything in their own circle, and assuming automatically that they always know best because they are lawyers and so on, and they are so special. And what's really puzzling, that Mr. Ekolesi was just before complaining about the comedy of fear-mongering about the communists and the incapability of the Christian Democrats to avoid corruption and to run the country of Italy, the Italian Republic properly. And then he claims that Berlusconi made it all gone bad. Gone bad from what? From the corruption and an inability to really run the country. So we have like two major. I personally like Mr. Ekolesi. I think he's a good guy, and I think he wishes well. But these two major contradictions really kept my has captivated my attention, and that's why I see here a huge problem in this more elitist vision of politics, which is fortunately going away. Of course, Mr. Ekolesi is scared and terrified by for instance, for those changes, by these changes, and I am thrilled by them. I hope that now, when the European Union has shown its total incapability of securing, making the immigration, for instance, secure for the peoples of Europe, I think that this more nationalistic, realistic and populistic even approach is far more common sense than the previous